Okay. Welcome. I'm Natalie Miller. I'm thrilled to have you all with me here for this session on building bridges with your MLLs using their funds of knowledge. Thank you all for coming, for seeing the value in this. I am thrilled to share this with you. It's a passion of mine. So thank you for showing up. A little bit of background about me. I am Natalie Miller. I do have my master's degree with dual immersion in middle school, teaching half the day in English, half the day in Spanish. I ended up moving from there to a different state to starting a middle school MLL program with a school that was just beginning to get a population. So I was able to really start that from the ground up. And that was fascinating. I loved that. I moved on from there to do kindergarten. So after middle school to kindergarten, and spent 9 years in kindergarten with MLLs every year. About a third of my class was MLLs. And from then I went to high school. So I have been literally all around from K through 12 in a number of different settings with MLLs. And I'm now a K through 12 national consultant with Vista Higher Learning. And we're here today to talk about funds of knowledge. And I'm curious if you guys are familiar with this research, if you have a passion for this like I do, or if you've never heard of it, this is just an introduction. Either way, go ahead and drop in the chat. But I'm thrilled to be able to share with you what I've learned, what I've studied, and my findings here. Just a bit of an agenda. We're going to start with introductions, some building background of just funds of knowledge research and what that is and entails, the why, and of course, practical applications for the classroom. I am definitely a classroom teacher and a very practical person, and I want you to walk away from this with applications you can use in your classroom. And then finally, we will learn from the experts. So let's get into it. So what are funds of knowledge? Again, drop in the chat if you guys are familiar with this or if this is totally new for you. A body of research that originated in the late 1980s to early 1990s out of Tucson, Arizona. So this was a collaborative research work from professionals in the field of education, psychology, and anthropology, driven by concerns of imbalances in the educational system. They noticed that students from minoritized communities performed poorly in comparison to their Caucasian peers. The initial researchers of this, you're going to see these names a few times. Norma Gonzalez and some two, and from then on, I don't know if you can totally geek out on all this research. Definition here for funds of knowledge refers to historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being. So I'll read that again and then we'll flesh that out a little bit. So funds of knowledge essentially refers to historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being. So what are the funds of knowledge? So the basic premise of funds of knowledge work is no matter what their background, all students and families have these historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being that provide meaning and sense to their lives. Nevertheless, these funds of knowledge are often overlooked or rendered invisible within formal education settings, generating a disconnection between in-school and out-of-school experiences, which impacts negatively on student motivation and on engagement in school life. So what we're saying is these students have all sorts of knowledge. They come to us with background knowledge, but sometimes these are overlooked in our And have you seen kids amazing home experiences that are overlooked and then they're not necessarily engaged? I hope not. After 20 years, I've seen all sorts. So maybe that's why this was particularly engaging for me. We'll get into our whys. I'm breaking up. It's glitching. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. Oof. Thank you. I'm trying to keep my chat open. My voice keeps cutting in and out. Okay, let me see what I can do here. One thing I can do is I'm going to turn off my video. Sometimes it's just trying to use too much bandwidth. I'll shut that down. I'm going to go back a slide and just go to the definition here. And oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I keep reading your chat. So we're talking about the funds of knowledge, essentially the background knowledge that our MLLs come to us with, historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being, that our students come to us with all sorts of skills. And we may or may not be recognizing those in our classrooms, in our educational settings. So I'm going to go back to this slide because this is important. It discusses the basic premise. So the basic premise research is that no matter what their background, all students and their families have historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being that provide meaning and sense to their lives. Nevertheless, these funds of knowledge are often overlooked or rendered invisible within formal educational settings, generating a disconnection between in-school and out-of-school experiences, which impacts negatively on student motivation and engagement in school life. Still happening, but not as bad. Okay, keep letting me know in the chat. I'll see what I can do here. Thank you, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. So perhaps one of the most important contributions to come out of this whole body of research of funds of knowledge was that it revealed deficit thinking. For example, here, the research exposed deficit views that situate problems or failures within students themselves or within their family backgrounds. For example, one of the original researchers, Kathy Amonte, noted this as she critically reflected on her own views. She reveals how her own beliefs had been formulated and reinforced during her teacher training, during her time at university, with her being led to believe that low income and minority students were more likely to experience failure in school because their home experiences had not provided them with the prerequisite skills for school success in the same way. So she came to see her job as limitations in her students. So I want to pause here as we've introduced this idea of a deficit view. Bilingualism be considered a deficit? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat if you have any understanding of this, if you've seen this in the schools you've taught at, where our okay, let me see here, still glitching. Could it be your email alerts? I don't believe I have any email alerts going on. I appreciate the feedback because I have turned off my video. I have all the bandwidth. No one in my house is using any bandwidth. Nothing is streaming. I am here alone. Don't do your gaming while I'm on a thing, but there's literally no one here. So no one else. I don't believe it's my emails. And I've turned off this. Okay, y'all, teamwork. Let's troubleshoot together. How can I fix this? When in doubt, reboot. I am afraid, Jillian, I am afraid if I like cut this whole thing off, will I get you all back? I have 24 of you in here. Will I get you back? Oof, should I like log off and log back on? Is that what we mean by reboot? I'm afraid. Sometimes my computer takes a while to reboot, is all I'm saying. I could log out. Sure. Okay. Sometimes it takes me a while to get back into Zoom. So there was some hesitancy there. Yet if you can't hear me, what good is this, right? Oh, goodness gracious. Sure, log out and log back in. Okay. Maybe it's my mic. Is it my speakers or my mic? Well, the mic is here. Here's my speakers. Thank you, Eve. Yes, yes, Eve. I entirely agree. Those who are uninformed. Yes, I entirely agree. Okay, we're going to press on just because I know we have captions on. Okay, awesome. Of course, now you sound great. Thank you, guys. We're going to press on just because I know sometimes it can take me a while to log back in, and I so appreciate your comments. I am reading these, trying to talk and read. We're going to press on. Thank you for having the comments of the captions on. That's a great idea. As Aisha says, you have captions on. Awesome. Do that. So yes, and thank you for responding to the question of how would it be considered a deficit? For example, I am bilingual. I speak Spanish and English, as you probably figured out, as I used to teach in a dual immersion setting. I perhaps that's why I had just a special connection to this body of research of why is this a deficit? I don't understand. I always had such respect for my students who came from a multilingual background. They could speak two languages. They were often doing more than our monolingual. I found it amazing. And Eve, who said being bilingual or LEP or MLL. Oh, I know what it is. Your internet connection. Okay, so this is something I cannot do anything about. We have, that's just my connection. My router is right here. We're getting the VNet. They literally have the flags in our yard to cut up our yard to put up, to do the VNet to connect us to the VNet that's up the road. So that's something I can't do anything about, and I don't think it will change if I log out. Yes, that can be seen as a deficit by monolinguals or those who are uninformed. Yes, I think. Yes, I agree, Eve. Thank you for rolling with that. Speaking of language was a deficit, but now I see it as a strength and asset. Ah, thank you, Dr. Grussel, for sharing your change there, change of opinion. And we'll talk about some of that labeling late, yes, in this slide here. So yes, I think the idea of the deficit comes from people who don't understand the value that there can be in speaking another language. And so in what ways have you seen this? Go ahead and continue putting in the chat. I'll share with you my experience on this labeling of LEP. For example, as I said, I started a program in North Carolina and I was the LEP chair. I had a whole committee under me. We were the LEP committee. I was the LEP committee chairperson. I oversaw all things related to LEP. LEP was my title. Limited. And I want to just think about this for a minute. If everybody turns off video, it might be better. Okay, that's an idea. If everyone turns off video. Okay, cool. Try it. I think it has to do with my connection and there's literally nothing I can do about that. So I'm just going to roll forward and hope that it like sorts itself out. I've seen labels with standardized testing because they're based, yes, that can be based on monolingual perspectives. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So I was the LEP committee chairperson. This was literally a part of my title, and it still is. They have LEP committees, LEP directors. And if you just step back and think for a minute, would you want to be labeled limited proficient in anything as an adult? For example, let's just throw out some real world examples. We could label someone as limited proficient in math. How about limited proficient in parenting? Would you want to be known as limited proficient in finances, financial literacy, you name it? I think the more time you spend looking at these labels, we see that's insulting. That is definitely insulting. That's not a compliment. That is an insult to say you are limited proficient in this. And I was not a fan of this label. And in fact, I never used it in front of students. I would not. Again, I just had a genuine natural respect for my students, probably because I knew where they were coming from, they spoke a different language at home and they had to navigate school life in English. And they all, of course, were super respectful and amazing, wonderful kids doing a great job with that. So I just so hesitated to ever say that. And I recall so specifically one day we were getting ready to do our access testing, of which I was a big piece of that. And of course, I'm very super organized. I had a whole plan days in advance of how to get those kids dismissed to me because on my committee, I had members of each grade level. This was a middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th. And so I had committee members from each grade level who had those kids and who could dismiss them to me. I had distributed my plans. I had everything all planned out. And something went awry with actually following the plans, and it led to one of the administrators getting on the PA system and announcing, would all the LEP kids, or would all, I don't think he said LEP, would all the limited English proficient kids go to Miss Miller's room? And I am very honest when I tell you, I was not happy. I was so upset, visibly upset. I had to step out into the hallway and just collect myself before even beginning and is that the way you want to start access testing and see where their proficiencies are? It was not a good day. I'm thankful for the friends that I had in that building. It was a huge building, 900 students there. I mean, it was huge. And the friends that I had there who, at that time we had classroom phones, and one in particular, she called me on my classroom phone and was like, oh my word, I can't believe he just did that. I'm so sorry. Because she got it. She got it. That this is not good. We do not want to be calling these students limited proficient. I mean, let's look at the plus side of, I can see Rosa who says here, it's a plus. Yes, it's a plus. This is a bonus rather than a deficit. And that's definitely how I saw it. So yes, that was, yes, very upsetting. Thank you, Eve, for agreeing with me. So that's my story on the LEP, the labeling, and why would we ever call this a deficit? If anything, being bilingualism in any other area, workforce, this would be an asset. Oh, wow, we have someone here who can speak two languages. That's awesome. Would that not be considered an asset anywhere else? Yet in our schools, their skills and knowledge that they've learned at home, as we said from the research, are often overlooked, and they're seen as being at a deficit to their English-speaking peers. U.S. schools have historically centered on English. Yes, English-only ideology. Yes, yes, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, absolutely. So that's where we're heading with this research. So the research revealed a deficit view. So let's move on from the deficit view and let's focus on capabilities and some of the things that these kids are able to do. So this focus, what happened with the research then is it turned to an asset-based approach. So this FOK is funds of knowledge, resulted in an asset-based approach. So our analysis of funds of knowledge represents a positive, and we argue realistic view of households as containing ample cultural and cognitive resources with great potential utility for classroom instruction. And this is from our original 4 researchers in their original work in 1992. And continuing on, this view of households, we should mention, contrasts sharply with prevailing and accepted perceptions of working class families as somehow disorganized socially and deficient intellectually, perceptions that are well accepted and rarely challenged in the field of education and elsewhere. I'm going to tell you guys, I've read this a few times and it still hits hard. These researchers found that this view of households, the prevailing and accepted perceptions are that working class families are somehow disorganized socially and deficient intellectually. And these perceptions are well accepted and rarely challenged. That's tough. So what they're trying to say is no, our research is showing that we have a positive view of households containing ample cultural and cognitive resources with great potential utility for the classroom instruction. So this is actually, we're starting to see here, this is an asset. Let's continue on. I've got a bunch more. I love this stuff. I totally geeked out on the research. So these are our 4 guys here, the 4 original researchers from anthropology and education coming together in 1992, saying children in the households are not passive bystanders, as they seem in the classrooms, but active participants in a broad range of activities mediated by these social relationships. In some cases, their participation is central to the household's functioning, as when the children contribute to the economic production of the home. And they gave some examples of children being able to translate for families at school or government offices, caring for younger siblings, and even repairing appliances, they noted. And I'm wondering, have you guys experienced any of this? If you're teaching MLLs, I'm guessing you have, that if you have any knowledge of their background, that you have students who translate at home for families, or that you have students who care for their younger siblings that are actively involved, active participants in a broad range of activities where their participation is central to the household's functioning. Go ahead and type that in the chat. I'm just curious because I know I have, but I've also been in this 20 years and in a variety of different settings. But I can tell you while you're go ahead and type, and while you're typing, I'll tell you a couple of my stories. When I first started in dual immersion, this was 7th grade. And my 7th grader told me that she fed their baby. She had a number of siblings. She was the oldest. I forget how many, but the youngest was a baby, like baby in the high chair. And she was the one feeding the baby, like literally like spoon feeding the baby, giving the baby food. A former 6th grade student would translate for family members at doctor appointments. I remember being so impressed. She was a young lady, very mature for her age and very capable in both languages. This was Russian English. And I just thought how brave of her at 11, 12 years old in 6th grade to attend a doctor's appointment and to translate for adults. I know most 6th graders, a lot of 6th graders are shy, timid. They would be intimidated to do such a thing, and just how brave. I've always been so impressed with my MLLs and what they can do. I'm going to scroll up because I do want to see your comments. I asked genuinely because I genuinely want to see. Um, Translating at doctor's appointment, school registration. My students constantly translate. Yes, absolutely. Here's one. My elementary students go to work for their parents in everything from cleaning to landscaping. I believe it. They tell me how to succeed. Yes, yes, yes. They are very smart. Yes, thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that. Yes. All of them know how to install a new toilet and much, much more. Yes, yes, they're smart kids. They're industrious. Translate, taking care of younger siblings. Yes, absolutely. Have seen that. Thank you, Victoria. We have students who translate everywhere for their families and work and provide for their families. Yes, I have seen that. And that hurts my heart as a mom to see young kids having to work, but I know they do, and they do it often, I would say joyfully, with a good attitude. Yes, my students had a long, good laugh when I told them that I didn't know how to install the toilet. That's awesome. Yes. Yes. I once had a kindergarten student who spoke no English. It was what? Yes, yes. What an asset. I have seen the same coming. I was teaching in kindergarten for 9 years with MLs. They came to me at all different levels of proficiency. And it was so amazing to see the ones with no English who just came alive with their English abilities. Yes, and I think we already got to that one. Okay, thank you. I'm glad I got through. I just want to make sure I got through all of them. I didn't overlook.
But you should be in a position to encourage him on.
My 6th grader follows his brother through surgery because he was the only one who spoke English. What an asset to the family to have him who could speak English.
I think it's this one. This guy. And so when you just hold on a second,
that's why the behavior is so good.
So when
the
you
family
come up,
on
you're
that.
gonna have to make
Yes. So I believe that they are active participants.
You're gonna have to go up to the stoplight. You're passing Hickman. You make a U-turn, and it's literally right there. You go down this little road.
That would be helpful.
You'll see the storage units.
Yeah.
You'll see the storage units.
I keep chickens, but I'm able to dispatch them. I rely on my dad. One of my students laughed at me since I bet he was doing this.
When you go down Hickman Road,
I apologize. I can't hear. There's just someone else talking.
Yeah, someone else needs to be on mute. I'm not sure who that is. I can't see all the participants. Is it Laura?
Yes. And then, so when you pull in, you're going to see that there's a set of buildings here, and then there's a set of buildings here.
There we go. All right, so yes, I'm so glad you guys are on the same page with me that yes, this is an asset. And that's essentially what came out of this research is this asset-based approach. Fantastic. So some conclusions from this Funds of Knowledge research. The point of this homeschool-based research is the development of relationships of empowerment and access between communities and schools. And they concluded that the curricula developed based on household knowledge must be designed to enhance traditional curricula, not necessarily to replace it. The goal is to improve students' engagement in learning by framing the curricula and pedagogy with familiar contextual cues. So what they're saying is we don't necessarily need to replace this, but let's just make it connected. Let's make some more school to home connections because we're often just overlooking all their skills and assets and their funds of knowledge from home life. So essentially say, this is an asset. A fund is an asset. So this funds of knowledge is an asset. And it suggests that students have knowledge, assets, and that these assets have been gained through authentic personal experiences. Suggests that educators should look at the wealth of information gained when they tap into an ELL student's funds of knowledge and just recognize this is an asset. They have all sorts of skills and knowledge, like the dispatching chickens and knowing how to install a toilet. That's absolutely amazing. Knowledge I don't have. My husband's a plumber, so I'm very thankful for that. And one final conclusion, that the teacher is the bridge. Again, our original researchers of 92 pointed out, the presenters pointed out, it is the teacher, not the anthropologist, who is ultimately the bridge between the student's world, their family's funds of knowledge, and the classroom experience. So why is this important? Well, this shift in perspective from deficit to asset can affect all sorts of things. I just jotted some down here, but feel free to drop in the chat what else you think this could affect. First thing I thought of was student self-esteem and confidence, simply because I taught middle school. And that was huge. Self-esteem and confidence in middle school. Do you remember middle school? Oh, I think everyone is insecure about everything. That might be an overstatement, but insecurities abound. And I think understanding their background as an asset can seriously help their self-esteem and confidence. I think it affects how teachers view multilingual students. Are we going to view this as a deficit or an asset? And how they view themselves then. How are they accepted and received in their school? And this could improve interactions in the classroom. So feel free to drop in the chat any other ways that this is important, this shift in perspective from a deficit view to an asset. And so my why is this important to me? I think you can all tell I'm passionate about this. I'm very engaged and interested. So I was not trained in this funds of knowledge in my teacher training program. So after being a teacher, I mean, this is something that didn't come across my radar till I would say post-COVID. So rather recently. And I've been an ML teacher for, as I said, 20 years now. So this was after 15 years of teaching, this came across my radar. And I'm just going to say this was validating because I have been doing these things, recognizing my students being bilingual or even multilingual as an asset throughout, and recognizing that even, I would say, honoring that, even having a special bulletin board to recognize their home countries and what they can do. And I would say from the very beginning of my teaching career. So I'm just going to say this was validating that, hey, something I've been doing that just seemed right and natural and logical as an educator is now backed by research. Yes, that's a win. I'm happy about that. And I would just say it was just a natural result of genuinely respecting my students' backgrounds. I'm multilingual myself. I've studied other languages. I know what it takes. It is no joke to be able to speak another language. And these students often speak more than just their home language and English. Sometimes there's even a third language as well. So, and in all honesty, I found that these multilingual learners were just very respectful, very appreciative. I was the one teaching them English. They appreciated this. They were thankful. They were just good kids, all around good kids, enjoyable to be around. I genuinely respected them. So this focus on their funds of knowledge as an asset was just a natural outworking of my respect for them. Perhaps because I taught in dual immersion and everyone there spoke multiple languages and we just had a genuine mutual respect for one another. But that's just part of my why. Also, I'm just naturally an encourager. So it just fit very well for me as an educator just to tell them how awesome they were, because I knew they were at home transiting for their parents and taking on responsibilities in their home while still keeping up with studies, despite, as they would tell me, not being treated well by other students and sometimes even other teachers. So I know they dealt with a lot and I genuinely respected them. And I told them, like, you guys are awesome. You guys are amazing. And so this was just part of, I would say, just who I am as a person as well as an educator. All right, I got some comments here and I don't want to overlook them. It's important for students to be able to identify their strengths that not everyone else possesses. Yes, not everyone can speak 2 or 3 languages as these kids can, and they're often young. I mean, as I said, I was doing this in middle school, 11, 12, 13 years old, and can speak 2 languages and translate for the family. And I found that to be pretty fantastic. This year I spoke with our school counselor about how some of our MLs can affect, okay, since they have to do many things at home that other students might not do at all. I was thinking that, comparing their responsibilities at home with some of our others, they're translating, they're helping in the home physically, genuinely helping, participating actively. And I thought, what are other kids doing? Are they cooking for themselves in middle school? Can they do basic things for themselves? I don't know. I'm sure each household is different, but comparing with things that other students might not do at all. Okay, very good. Thank you guys for sharing. I do appreciate the feedback here. Since I can't see your faces, I'm sharing my screen so I can't see you. The feedback here in the chat is so nice. So shout out to Delaware, guys. I would be remiss if I did not mention you. I noticed your labeling. You have MLL, multilingual learner, and I love that. I've taught, as I said, in North Carolina. I've taught in Michigan. I'm now in Pennsylvania. And I've seen EL, I've seen dual language learner, emergent bilingual. I've seen all of these and more research here that we focus on bilingualism, yet in many parts of the world populations are multilingual. And I would say that is the case for a number of our students when I taught in dual immersion in Grand Rapids. That was a dual immersion school, but many of the students had a different home language from where they were from. A lot of them came from Southern Mexico or Guatemala, and they had their own native language, then learned Spanish, then English in our dual immersion. So I love that you're recognizing this with your label MLL. And I did not see anything LEP anywhere on the Delaware website. In fact, I went to this document that you have here where it mentioned your core values. We value multilingualism as an asset. Y'all, I have not seen that in other states. So I just need to give you just massive props. I was so impressed. Quoted here, multilingualism is an asset that improves communication, increases job opportunities, fosters cultural understanding, enhances travel experiences, encourages personal growth, preserves heritage. That's a huge one. Offers educational advantages and provides cognitive benefits. I'm going to click here to show you our goal, the strategy that we are focusing on. But while I'm getting there, I'm going to talk about preserving heritage because I'm hoping this is a positive shift, but I would always encourage my MLLs to maintain their home language. It's their culture, it's their whole background, it's where they came from. Some of the parents would feel the need to stop the home language so they could learn English. Like, we have to learn English, we have to do English. And yes, and I would say, okay, English is valuable. English will help them, but just bring English alongside of their home language. Still keep the home language because that's their culture. That's who they are. And I'm hoping that's shifted because I know older people, I would say my age and older, they stopped. They don't know. I was just talking to a mother in her mid 60s who has a son in his mid 40s, who said she made him stop. She made him stop learning it was Spanish. She's Puerto Rican. She made him stop learning all Spanish because she knew the importance of English and she just wanted him to learn English. And I've heard that story so many times. And I just thought, how sad. Because I mean, yes, I see the value in English. Of course, I'm an English teacher, but I see the value in their home language. So I want to get to our priority here that we're focusing on. With developing a shared awareness of the value of multilingualism. You know, I think I can zoom on this here. Let me zoom in here. So this is from Delaware, and I just enjoyed learning about your guys' state. In all honesty, I've never lived in Delaware. I was asked to present here, and I'm thrilled because you guys this is priority number 3. Goal 1, emphasize the value of multilingualism as an asset rather than a deficit, with a specific focus on highlighting the students' home language as valuable resources. The people in the great state of Delaware understand this research. I love this. Establish a shared definition and understanding of multilingualism within the educational community and beyond. Here, goal 2, celebrate and center the diverse linguistic assets of the student population by showcasing the various learners, dialects, and cultures represented within communities and across the state. Guys, as I said, I've been in multiple states and I have not seen any statewide documents like this. This is absolutely outstanding. So massive, massive kudos to you guys in Delaware for recognizing this and having these goals. For that reason, I wasn't sure how many of you would want to come to my session because I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys get it. You understand the value, the asset-based approach. Promote the use of culturally responsive pedagogy and instructional materials that celebrate and incorporate students' diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds. I love this, guys. As someone who just respects the ML community so much, I love that you guys have a whole priority and even 6 strategies here. Priority 3, 2 goals, 6 strategies. Absolutely love it. Leaving for shuttle duty. Oh, I understand. Yes, I have been on bus duty more times than I care to count. Agreed. It was painful for my father to lose Japanese. Yes. 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 Very happy that we've kept culture. Yes, that home culture is so important. Yes, I completely agree. So real quick props, that was I'll go back to my PowerPoint here. I thought I was showing my PowerPoint. Okay, let's try that one more time. Are you guys seeing my PowerPoint? Just give me like a yes in the chat if you can see my PowerPoint again. Yes, okay, thank you. So practical application. I'm a teacher, I'm very practical. Yes, the research is fascinating and I could live in a research world, but we are also practical people. So how can we use this in our classroom? First of all, how can we access their funds of knowledge? How can we even get a clue of what they know? Students, Aisha, you cannot see my screen. Okay. Aisha, can you see it now? I should be showing, okay, I thought I was showing my screen. So how can we? Good, thank you, Aisha. I appreciate that. I am keeping up with my chat, trying to, because I can't see your faces. This is how this is my feedback here. Students, even of the same language background, may have a different experience. The one who can dispatch chickens might not know how to put in a toilet. The one who can do the toilet might not know about the chickens. So how do we find out about their funds of knowledge? Good question. Firstly, let's just figure out what they know. Surveys. I do a survey every year. I love it. I literally take notes. My class sizes have increased so much that I actually jot down notes or a quick summary of what's going on in each of my kiddos' backgrounds and try to truly get to know them. So the starred ones here actually come from the researchers because I totally geeked out on the research. Conversation. So they were saying to have conversations with the parents. I'm sorry, conversation with the students. Ask them if you get a chance to have, like one-on-one or small group time, say, hey, how many of you guys know how to X, Y, and Z? How many of you guys know how to do drywall, cut down a tree, do yard work? How many of you guys know how to cook or feed the baby? And sometimes show of hands, sometimes a little bit of sharing experience. So that's conversation with students. And did home visits. All of this research was gathered through home visits. Now, again, I'm a very practical person. That's not really a reality for us nowadays. That would be very challenging. However, I can speak to phone calls home. I can tell you about multiple phone calls home. I would often do this at the start of the year. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but you call home with something like a happy gram because you don't know if later on you might have to call home because so-and-so maybe behaved poorly. And it's always helpful to have had a positive conversation to begin with. So I would find something positive, and there was often, I mean, this was never hard. There's often multiple positive things I could say. So I would call home, and I specifically remember this one, how much you can learn through just a phone conversation. And I was speaking to the grandmother of a young man who had moved to the United States from Colombia. His dad had brought him up at age 11 from Colombia to the US. Dad lived with his mom. So the three of them, grandma, son, and little guy, 11-year-old, lived together. So I'm speaking to grandmother, just saying, he's super respectful. He's a great kid, always very polite and on the ball, and you name it. He truly was. This was not a stretch at all. He truly was. And she informed me, as I'm sure maybe some of you have had similar experiences, she told me how it was. She stopped me right there and she said, you know what? If it is not at home, it starts at home. And if they don't hear it at home, you're not going to see it at school. And she, she very much just informed me of how it is. And just little conversations like that, how things go in the home, that he's held accountable for his actions there. And, I called home another time and learned from a young lady that I had in class was actually staying with her older sister. Older sister had stepped in a motherly role, and I called home for, I forget the reason, but she said something, she asked me something, and I said, oh yes, I'll tell her when I see her again, because the young lady was not in school that day. I thought she was sick. So I asked, oh, is she home sick today? Come to find out from the sister, she was not sick. Sister thought she was in school. And sister was not happy to learn that young lady was not in school. So you can learn a lot about their home life simply just from phone calls home. Other teachers, this was another thing noted in the research, of other teachers that share a similar background can be a great asset to help you. However, even more helpful if admin buys into this and gives time, because these teachers also have other roles, but they can be an information source of some funds of knowledge. Also, very practically speaking, so this is something that I did just to value, just to honor them and where they were coming from. This was my meager classroom. I say meager because there's not much going on here. Your country. No one here in this room has ever lived in El Salvador or Romania or South Korea or Russia for that matter. So you are an expert. You can tell us what it's like there. What's the weather like? What do they eat? How is it the same as here? What's different? And so they would give a small report, stand at the front of the room and share with us a little about their country. These were newcomers. They were my newcomers group for, of course, in my LEP class. So these were my newcomers. So it was not a very involved report. Here's an example, guys. I do not have actual PDF from 2007. That's almost 20 years ago. I don't. Very similar to us. So I love this because I'm from El Salvador. Oh, and I love when I share. Yes, 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 yes. I can see that, Jenny, that you have experience in this. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Okay. Did I turn off? No, I didn't turn off my audio. Okay, I'm just gonna holler. Yeah, I'm just gonna yell. So if I'm yelling, you can turn down your audio. And the people that don't need that, then maybe they can actually hear me. So awesome. So thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. It was fascinating, I think, for the other students in the classroom to hear. I know I loved hearing about these other countries, but I could tell they were proud. They were proud of to share, like, hey, yeah, this is where I'm from. And I think they believed me. They knew they were the expert. They knew there was no one else in that room that had ever been to this country. So they were the ones who could tell us that. And yes, I still remember my little guy. This was El Salvador here. Thank you for the comments from El Salvador. It was Amilcar. He was from El Salvador, and he was such a sweet, sweet boy. So again, I was doing this back in 07 without knowing the research. So it was just awesome that, like, okay, I'm doing something good here. Okay. Validated by research. That's awesome. So here's a zoomed in of just our little country report. And also thank you to my husband who dug back into our backup drive from 07 to find these pictures of my classroom so I could present this to you guys. Practically speaking, how do you access their funds of knowledge? Sometimes, guys, if you have a curriculum that builds the bridge, I love this curriculum one because your focus on this conference is bridging the gap or bridging things. And I love this curriculum of bridges. It's from Vista Higher Learning, and it's for 6th, 7th, and 8th. The very first chapter in each one discusses their identity, who they are. And so this can be helpful. How do you access their funds of knowledge? Sometimes you have a curriculum that draws it out without you having to put a lot of effort into it. It will draw it out for you. So I want to show you just some examples. And sometimes you don't have the curriculum that does this. I have also, again, I'm a super practical person. I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, practical to my core. So if you don't have a curriculum like this, stay with me. I have ideas for you afterwards. So here is unit 1. This is from the Bridges B. So this would essentially be correlated to the 7th grade standards, unit 1, but they all have something very similar. Their very first unit. So when you get these kids brand new to your classroom, you want to find out, who are these kids? Well, guess what? Our very first chapter is discovering your roots. Awesome, because I want to. I genuinely want to know. Thank you, Rebecca, for letting me know. I want to know who they are. I want to know what they're all about. What are their funds of knowledge? What can they do? So we talk about identity and our big idea, your personality, traits, your special stories, and history make up your identity. So here's a great little intro video to discuss identity. So sometimes your curriculum can do it for you. But if not, I do have ways around that as well. Practical, easy things.
Identity. Who are you?
We all can identify ourselves in different ways.
Like your name. I'm Annie. I'm Catalina Perez Gomez.
I'm Victor Jeffrey Marcus Samuel Lopez Martinez. I know, my parents went a little nuts with the names. You can just call me Victor. And if you want to play with me online, search for Driving Beast 2020.
your name, your username,
Thank you, Jolene, for the Vista curriculum. Yeah, so just an idea of identity. All your name, your username, they all make up your identity or who you are. So I love this interactivity of what you bring. Make a list of people, places, and things that demonstrate who you are, music, games. I love this because that was me as the teacher, unit 1, very beginning of the year. I want to get to know my kids. I want to get to know what they're all about. So I love that this curriculum makes it easy because it's right here for the books for grade 6, 7th, and 8th. So what they're going to end up doing is reading memoirs that discuss the writers, the author's ancestors. So they discuss how they were brave pioneers that were inspiring, that essentially moved to this country as like the first to move to this country. So there's the little before you reading strategy. But here's some of the memoirs. There's a series of about 5 different memoirs here. So we discussed the genre, but each of these authors is talking about their ancestors. It's called Honoring Our Ancestors, and each one tells their own story. They're about 1 page here with some artwork here. Oh, is that it, Jillian? Is that it? Oh, I think you're right. Okay, now I know. Okay, I can cut those out, but I'm in the middle. Okay, yes, I will cut those out. Thank you, Jillian. I appreciate it. Teamwork, helping me figure this out. Good deal. So they go through reading memoirs, and you'll see how we wrap this up into their funds of knowledge. So each author obviously respects their ancestors and is talking about how their ancestors were pioneers, brave, the first to come to this country, settle somewhere. Then we have a book club discussion about these ancestors. And here we have some activities that could also tap into your students' funds of knowledge and I understand you all, but how could you guys do this? So this was focused on memoirs. Could you also bring in some memoirs? Here's a video of the club would look like, and this will give you some background into those memoirs. I know I went through it rather quickly. We're running out of time, but this will give you some info on those memoirs there. Interesting. It was a cute video of the kids giving a great model of a book club. Not sure why I didn't go. These kids here sit around the library talking about, oh, we read this in our memoirs last night, and they made a connection and supporting evidence. And they've probably spoken a way that most middle schoolers might not, saying, oh, that reminds me of supporting evidence for this memoir who was so brave. And not every middle schooler is going to talk like that, but it did focus on that reading strategy of supporting evidence. And it brought out how they were brave. They were pioneers in each of these ancestors were. So how could you work this into your classroom? I want to talk about these book club discussions here. Obviously some that were more write their answers. What did the artists learn from their ancestors? The kids would have learned that from reading those memoirs. How did they show that in their painting? Because each had a painting. How do they show this in their memoirs? What do they have in common? So here were the authors of those memoirs and some words that you can see that they used in those memoirs. So here's one. Describe the collection of memoirs and choose a memoir to recommend. Of course, we have to discuss the academic vocabulary of what recommend means and making connections. Which artist's story did you like most and why? Which artist is most similar to you and why? In which painting did you like the best? I love this idea of making connections because this is how you learn about your kids. Which artist? Choose one of your ancestors. Write about how you are similar to this person. Use 2 pieces of evidence. I love this. I feel like this would take me a couple days to get through because I would spend some time here. Tell me about one of your ancestors. How are you similar to this person? This would be one that I would go after. I might not have time or be able to do every single thing, but I would certainly do this, the making connections and this. So this is where I was saying, even if you don't have this awesome curriculum called Bridges that has a very first chapter that does this, could you do this with memoirs? Pull some other memoirs have them make connections, and tell how they're similar to one of their ancestors. Likewise, they're going to build off of the memoirs into a personal narrative writing, which I feel like any teacher could do, personal narrative writing. So they're modeling some of the personal narrative with the memoirs, but then tying that into the students doing their own writing of something that's happened in their life. And I feel like that's, regardless of the curriculum you use, that's accessible. That's something that we can do as teachers, is have them write a personal narrative for you to get to know them. Let me get to the writing portion here. Here's a great poem on Emily Dickinson. I love this because it's focused on identity, but it's very short and very brief for our MLLs, but it's still Emily Dickinson, and I love that, with a little bio of her. But I was trying to get to the writing tools for writing. So we're planning out our writing. We're learning about writing. We focus on different content areas. I love the focus on the social studies and just the celebrating different cultures there. But I was trying to get to oh, this is a good one too, because there's so much good stuff. Who are you online? Bridging to technology and identity online, with a great bio about an app developer. So here's the bridges to writing and having them write a personal narrative. Well, I love this for a few reasons. One, it helps you get to know your students. You want to get to know who they are. Writing a personal narrative is a natural outworking after having modeled memoirs. So here's an example of a student model. I love this here. Giving them an example of what it might look like at the end. When you're done, yours is going to look kind of similar to this one by Amara. And of course, we're working through our writing process, doing that supporting evidence. We're drafting, revising, editing, and of course, they're going to end up publishing and then presenting. I love the idea of having our MLLs present, and the higher level thinking that goes into that, as well as the practicing English that goes into presenting. So sometimes when you're trying to access your MLL's funds of knowledge, sometimes it helps when you have a curriculum that does that for you. But I hope I've shown that even if you don't have a curriculum, you can still do personal narrative writing. You can still find memoirs and make connections. So ideas for incorporating funds of knowledge. Guys, I'm sorry I'm talking so fast. We got very little time left. For example, with the memoirs, they had to make a text to self connection. That could be with any writing, even if you don't have that really cool Bridges one. The book club, journals. Guys, I loved journals. I learned so much about my kids through their journals. I would give them topics. Of course, on Monday it was tense, but Friday was always a free write. And they could just tell me anything they wanted. And I loved learning about them. Project-based learning, of course, is a great way for them to maybe take the project their own direction, showcase some of their skills, some things that they can do. Guys, there's so much more I want to share, but there's only 5-6 minutes left. So here's some ideas, and I'm going to roll right through all of these of project-based learning, because I know you guys, you are here, you are the cream of the crop. You know you can take anything and turn it into a project. And that's essentially what each of these were. We talked about some of the benefits of presenting. The metacognition is they're thinking through how they're going to do it as they're practicing their English, seeing. Thank you. Dr. LaShante Collier-Bacon. They're thinking through metacognition of how do I want to do this? Do I want to use a note card? Do I want to have a written out? Do I want to have an outline? What type of visual aid? So they're thinking about their thinking, and they're practicing their English every time they're practicing their presentation. So I wanted to hear from you guys, advice from the experts, because I'm under no illusion. You guys are in the great state of Delaware. You guys have this great MLL document. You're doing this. You're the ones that are showing up on a Wednesday afternoon when you could be doing other things. You're the ones that are here. So how have you accessed your students' funds of knowledge? How have you, so in case you didn't know, you guys are the experts, because you guys are the ones that are here. Put in the chat. I've enjoyed reading your guys' comments in the chat. How have you guys accessed this funds of knowledge from your students? How have you used it in your classroom? How have you incorporated it? I do want this to be super practical with practical takeaways. So how have you been doing this? So go ahead and put in the chat while you're thinking. I'm just going to get to my last slide of just find your why. What are the effects of accessing your students' funds of knowledge? A couple I thought about was just mutual respect. Of course, developing that community of mutual respect and building rapport. For sure, my students knew that I valued them, I respected them, I am for them. I was, as I said, just naturally an encourager. So yes, I value you, I support who you are, I respect your culture, and you can trust me. I'm your advocate. And there are many times I had to advocate for them. Sometimes they were treated poorly, but I'll tell you that rapport and that mutual trust with my students was absolutely priceless. Let's get to what some people have written here. I used the middle school book, Get Ready. Ah, that's a great one. Yes, I love Get Ready. I got my students presenting their journey from their country to America, their life story. That's fantastic. I would have just loved to just be in your room and be a fly on the wall and just hear their stories. I'm sure they were heroic, inspiring. Know the culture, get to know as individuals, then use that to incorporate. Absolutely, 100% Jenny. Yes, completely agree. That's absolutely what I tried to do. MLL learner portraits completed individually with student and teacher through interview discussion. Okay, I love that idea. That's a great way. I have to make the room in the curriculum for these, make room in the curriculum for these types of activities. And the beginning of the year seems the best time. These activities help build relationship with students. Yes, yes. That's why I love that. That's why I pulled the bridges. One, because it relates to your focus of your conference, but because each chapter, the very first chapter of each of those levels of bridges for 6, 7, 8 is all about identity, discovering your identity and who you are, which is super helpful for the teacher who wants to know that. Perfect. I love these ideas. Thank you guys for sharing. Of course, I geeked out on the research and I have oh, it didn't come through. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. There was like 3 slides, 3 different slides there of research that I had pulled for this. I absolutely love doing this. And I do have some slides to share with you guys that the presenters here of Delaware wanted me to share with you. Check out the Padlet for more resources. You can scan this. And you can also find the Launchpad that has links for your next sessions. And after the Padlet, your very next session is going to be tomorrow at 9:30 with Montserrat Garibay. Hope to see you there. I do want to spend, I'll be on just because I'm here and I want to be on, but if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those. Go ahead and just unmute. Be aware of what holidays they celebrate. Yes, yes, absolutely. I'll be honest, I don't know all different cultures' holidays, but that's something I would love to know and love to have them share with me. I have them from the beginning of the year. They doodle and write about themselves on a loose sheet of paper. We learn so much about what they can do or have done. Yes, sometimes just that doodling, that little bit of downtime. Thank you so much. Can be helpful. So I'll be on. Go ahead and feel free to add more to the chat or to unmute yourself if you have any questions, Q&A. Thank you, Eve. I appreciate you coming. Yes, you have a great afternoon too. It was delightful to be with you guys. I'm going to stop my share and stop my recording, but I will stay on. So I will be here for anyone. Stop the recording.